Hello Laziali all over the world, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile, with me again as usual, Alistair McKenzie. We're going to talk about Lazio-Inter. Hello Alistair, how are you? And let's start with what's your take on this match? Happy about the performance?
Yeah, I think so overall. I mean, it's a draw rather than a win, so
Really?
You could have been happier. But I think generally the mood and the expectations going into this game were quite low. We put out a tweet before the match asking people for their kind of what they expected, and the responses were pretty negative. No one was feeling very confident. So I think coming away with a draw, having gone behind, is a decent result. I know it's only 1 point from 2 games, but I think against a team like Inter, it's not the worst point in the world.
No, I agree. And again, I was all pessimistic like all the others. So it was obvious after what happened in the last match against Atalanta, 4 goals, the injury situation, we're going to talk about that. But the thing I appreciate more, Alistair, was the performance of the team, because before the Inter's goal, I thought Lazio was playing better football. And then in the second half, Lazio played better. And even when we were one man down, and we're going to talk about this, obviously, I thought Lazio created some interesting chances and defended quite well. So considering that Inter is considered by a lot of our football experts, and we did a podcast just a couple of weeks ago about who's going to win the Scudetto, and a lot of them put Inter winning instead of Juventus. So, play against what should be the favorite for the Scudetto and getting 1 point in this situation, I think is very optimistic, hoping that finally the new players will join us when the Serie A restart.
Yeah, I have to admit I was one of those people who said Inter will win the Scudetto. But, they were on decent form going into this. It was strange because there were so many goals in their first 2 matches, and Lazio had just conceded 4 to Atalanta, obviously. So I think there was a kind of fear or expectation that there would be a lot of goals in this match, that it would be a lot more open than it was. So I think really that, on the whole, is one of the biggest positives to take from this, was that losing 3 players to injury in the first half of a game is just, even for Lazio, it's quite something. And the fact that 2 of them were left centre-backs, Stefanagi and then Bastos, who's come on to replace him, and the other one was the left wing-back, meant that not only had we lost 3 players, we'd lost 3 players who were all on the same side of the pitch, and that side of the pitch is where Inter were probably most dangerous, with Hakimi coming down there. So I think that considering what we were up against, the fact that we went down to 10 men for the last 20 minutes on top of that, it's a pretty good performance. Opta tweeted after the match that that's 20 points Lazio have now won from losing positions in this calendar year in 2020, which is more than any other team in the major top 5 European leagues. And I think it was really nice to see that again, that kind of fighting spirit, because I think we lost that a bit after the lockdown, but it was there to see on Sunday, and that's partly what makes this a much better point than it might otherwise look.
To be honest, I thought we saw that fighting spirit in the second half. I didn't think in the first half Lazio was that concentrated. I thought, for example, Tucu Correa, since the season restarted, I'm not seeing the same player that I admired the first year at Lazio when he was coming in and scoring all the time. Yes, he's not a great header, but he had 2 very good assists from Lazzari, and I wanted to see something better from him, or at least trying something more. Milinkovic Savic said it at the end of the match. The first half we weren't playing that well. We said it in the locker room. We have to play a different type of football, and we saw it. I think that was the biggest difference, and the reason why Lazio was able to take a point in such a difficult situation.
Do you not find it still a bit frustrating though, because there is this kind of like Jekyll and Hyde side to this team, where it's almost like when they start playing well or when they get a goal or whatever it was so noticeable that as soon as they scored that goal, they almost kind of remembered that they're actually quite a good football team. And but it took them that moment to swing things in their favour. And that was why the timing of the Immobile red card was so frustrating, was because after the goal was scored, Lazio were on top and they were really pushing to get another one. But it is just frustrating that we don't ever seem to get that. Well, or at least we haven't for a long time seemed to get that intensity from Lazio for 90 minutes. We talked leading up to these games against Atalanta and Inter about the fact that we'd need a 90-minute performance. What I was pretty pleased with was how they held on after they'd gone down to 10 men. But, those final 20 minutes or so when Inter are bringing on, Stefano Sensi, Alexis Sanchez, and they weren't really troubled. They really restricted Inter to not very many good chances in this game. The one time they hit the post was a massive deflection. Even their goal came from a massive deflection. They had created otherwise pretty much one good chance the whole match, which is when Lukaku missed it early in the second half. So I think that defensively it was a lot better than we could have ever hoped, considering that was the biggest concern going into this. So many injuries and then more during the game.
But the problem, Alistair, I'm looking in this season Lazio is that the first chance we allow the other team score. It happened against Atalanta. It happened against Inter because before the goal, Inter didn't have a real chance. And this is a problem, even because I thought our defense was a little bit too soft with the goal of Inter. They were a little bit... You cannot allow... Yes, the ball bounced back, but defenders have to be very careful in the penalty box. And I think we didn't. And this was one of the reasons why we lost Atalanta. So there's something we have to focus better when we're defending. Because, yes, Lazio has this record of recovering when going down, but it cannot happen every single match because you won't be able to do it every single time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You only get that kind of record if you're constantly conceding the first goal, so it's not necessarily always something to be delighted about. I mean, we should talk about the red cards. Both red cards. I mean, Patric Bowman wrote to us saying, "Is there any competence requirements to become a referee in Italy?" I think there's a degree of frustration about, well, obviously the Atalanta game as well. Not everyone was very happy with the refereeing there either. But for me, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, Ciro should not have lashed out. It was a reckless thing to do, and you can get yourself in trouble for doing something like that. But for me, the thing that I took away from it was just that I cannot stand when footballers behave like this. It denigrates the entire game, the entire sport. It's like people's worst opinions of footballers was how Arturo Vidal and then Patric, probably even worse, Patric, behaved to get two players sent off. I just find it really, the words I use at times, pathetic and embarrassing, and I still feel that way now.
It's funny because people say, Vidal is a fighter. Come on. He was laughing when he went down. That's simply... And, the referee has been terrible yesterday, let's be honest. But you should use a little bit of common sense. Yellow card to Ciro Immobile, yellow card to Vidal. I don't think that was a red card because everybody saw it. Everybody saw Vidal acting. I don't know if he's going to be candidate for the Oscar this year, but, I thought that was a great performance. And on the other side, let me tell you that finally... Patric was smart, he said, well, the referee act like this, then I'm going to do the same. And as it wasn't a red card for Ciro Immobile, it was never a red card for Sensi. Simply Patric said, I'm going to be smarter than you. Vidal do it, I can do it as well, and that's what happened. I think it's terrible. I think they have to change the rule. But at the same time, the referee has to be... he didn't whistle nothing in the first 20 minutes, and then suddenly everything is a yellow card. Come on.
Yeah, you almost saw it in the slow motion replay with Patrick. You almost saw the thought process going through his head step by step, where you see the hand and then he kind of pushes him away, and then you see him thinking for a second, wait a second, I remember something happening earlier, and then all of a sudden he's down on the ground with his head in his hands, and oh my god, it's just embarrassing. I honestly, my take on it is I feel like players should be punished for behaving that way. I think it should
Absolutely.
at least be yellow card, but it's not what we want to see. I wrote about this today as well. It's saying basically that everyone wants really to see 11v11, and it's in everyone's interest for it to be 11v11, and also that we want to see players focused on playing good football, not on trying to trick the opponents or trick referees. I just can't stand that side of the game. And for two of Italy's biggest clubs and one of the biggest games of the season to go and have players behaving on both sides like that, I find it was just, it's embarrassing. It really was. But,
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you think about the normal football, the how people think about football fighters, etc. Vidal, a warrior. Come on, he has been pathetic. And simply, as I said, since he's never a red card, but Patric was smart. He said, well, this is how the referee is going. Well, I'm going to use it in my favor, like Inter did for them. So, I think it made a bigger impact, the red card of Ciro Immobile, because Lazio was playing much better. But, again, Lazio lost 3 players for injury, a red card, and was able to get a point against one of the best teams in Serie A. And that's a really positive sign. On the other side, Alistair, I think Inzaghi outplayed in a certain way Antonio Conte. Playing Perisic on the right side, all the right side with Lazzari on that side. I mean, the first 45 minutes, Lazzari seemed like Messi.
Yeah, getting a lot of time and space down there. Yeah, it was just a shame that didn't lead to anything, though. I mean, you mentioned, I think, already the Correa headers, and I feel like, maybe that's why we brought in a player like Muriqi, is that Lazzari does that so often. He finds that space, and his speed and his energy is incredible, and then all too often it ends in nothing. We saw a lot of that from last season, a lot of those positions taken up, not a lot of assists. And early on as well, he had an even better chance, I think, when it was something like a 4-on-3 or a 4-on-2, and his pass just went to nobody. So that was a little bit frustrating, but in terms of the delivery. But yeah, I mean, I think that was always going to be a bit strange. Perisic isn't a wing back. He got sent away from Inter last summer because he's not a wing back, and now all of a sudden, after a year at Bayern playing as a forward, as a winger, then he's allowed to come back and be a wing back. I find the whole thing very strange, but look, he ended up finding a way to set up their first goal, I suppose. But other than that. I thought it was quite a nicely balanced game. Inter controlled periods of it. They controlled a lot of the possession. But if you actually look at the passes in the game, Inter had almost 200 passes more than Lazio, but Lazio played more key passes than Inter did. They really struggled to really create an awful lot. I saw... we've got quite a few questions, so I'll start bringing some up. But there was one today about Stefanos Hendry asking about Lucas Leiva, saying Lucas looks really slow this season. What do you think? Was that something that stood out to you from yesterday?
No, I didn't. He's has never been very fast, but he's always in the right position at the right time, I thought. And you could see that Inzaghi is trying to manage him during the matches. I don't remember if he ever finished a match this season. I don't think so. Now with Escalante, and this is the positive thing, he can get subbed, and we have a player that can play that position quite well. So even when Leiva came out, Lazio still defended quite well with Escalante, and this is a very positive thing, because let's not forget that Leiva is fundamental for this team, but the season is very long. There's the Champions League, there's the Coppa Italia. We are just beginning of October, so there are plenty of matches to go, and we need Leiva fresh even in May. So I think Inzaghi is managing quite well this season. So no, honestly, I thought Leiva played very well till he was in the pitch.
Mentioning Escalante, another question from Alex Carpenter was about which new signing caught your eye the most. I saw you were full of praise for Akpro again after the game, but we saw Mohamed Faris get his debut, maybe not in the way he expected, quite a bit earlier. What did you think about the new guys?
Well, as I tweeted, I really like Akpro, how the hell you pronounce him. I feel that he could be the new Luis Felipe, the guy coming from nowhere. No one expected nothing, and I think this guy has something, and he showed it against Inter, and we saw it in other matches, and people will say, yeah, but he didn't play against anybody. He played against Inter when we were down one man, and I thought he had a good match. About Fares, you could see that he was a little bit not in the squad. He didn't know what to do, where to put the ball, etc. Obviously, no one was expecting to play, and it was funny because Inzaghi said in the press before the match, the day before the match, said, "Well, Fares just did physical training in the other squad, so he's not ready," and then he had to make him come in the first half. So. Having Keane, I thought he would play Keane because this could be the last time that we see him. So, yeah, I mean, now with the break, Fares will have time enough to learn what Inzaghi wants from him. But I think we said it. I think that was a very interesting player. Lazio needed badly this type of player. Lulic start training again. We don't know when he will be able to play, but you have Fares now, so. Inzaghi has more option.
Yeah, I agree with Faris. I think that he didn't look quite up to match fitness, but also it's a pretty difficult first game to come into cold. Up against Hakimi on that right hand side for Inter, left hand side for Lazio. Yeah, I mean, I remember at one point he had an opportunity to play in a cross and just completely got it all wrong. He gave the ball away a couple of times.
Yeah,
he doesn't look quite right. But let's not forget that he's pretty new and he's not really had much of a pre-season. So I think it's going to take a bit of time. We didn't really expect to, like you say, have him on the pitch for as long as he was. Another, a player we kind of talked about this recently about Strakosha and the fact that he gets maybe more criticism than he deserves. But we got a question about Strakosha from Fab Spresso saying, not so much a reaction to the draw against Inter, but should Inzaghi seriously consider starting Reina ahead of Strakosha in the near future? To me, Strakosha appears to be lacking confidence dating back to the end of last season, and I rarely feel safe with the Albanian in goals. And I have to say, I saw a few other comments online yesterday that were similar to that, calling for Reina to be given a chance ahead of Strakosha. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree. I mean, I don't think Lazio lost any point at the moment thanks to Strakosha. I mean, what would have happened if Strakosha if Strakosha was playing for Inter? Because I thought that Handanovic was poor when Milinkovic-Savic scored. That's something that a good goalkeeper should have saved. So Lazio fans are very critical. We know that, and the goalkeeper is always easy to blame for everything. So I think Reina is very important. He can push Strakosha and he can play definitely in other circumstances. But no, I think Strakosha should start still.
I think the question's being raised more and more now just because we seem to have a valid alternative. I think because we didn't see much of Silvio Proto last season, and because we didn't see that much of him, there wasn't, and he'd come from Belgium and people didn't know that much about him. There wasn't the same pressure from fans to say, look, let's get rid of Strakosha and play this guy instead. Whereas now we've got a guy like Pepe Reina who people know what to expect from him. They've seen him play at Napoli, they've seen him play at Milan and at Bayern and Liverpool probably as well, and so they kind of know what he's all about, and as a result that puts more pressure on Strakosha. I don't know. I didn't find. I mean, Fab Espresso in that question, I have to say he didn't say it was because of the game against Inter yesterday. It was just a general question. But it will be interesting to see how Inzaghi manages that now that he actually has two real options. I suppose it's good to have competition, and hopefully, like they said when he arrived, bring out even better performances from Strikosh and allow him to improve a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, I rate Stakosha very high. I think he's one of the best goalkeeper in Serie A. Lazio fans are very critical. I saw people tweeting about Milinkovic Savic saying that he played badly yesterday. So, when Lazio will finally start winning matches, we're gonna see different comments probably. So, Alistair, beginning of the season, what's your take of these three third matches? Lazio had two difficult ones against Atalanta and Inter, got 1 point. So Lazio, after three matches, is 4 points. The same situation of last year, if I recall. But last year, we only played the derby at the second week, and we had Sampdoria and Spal. So things have started better or not for you compared to last year?
Probably, better than last year for the reason you just said, in that we've already had two big games. It's a shame to have only taken 1 point from those two games, because I feel like even getting one win there would have really given this team a big confidence boost, which they seem to need. But considering the injuries, considering the fact that we've not managed to get the new signings in as quickly as we hoped, and that pretty much they've just... The way I phrased it last week was that they've not had a chance to press the reset button and actually feel like they're starting a new season, because the holiday was short, the pre-season was short, they've got an almost identical squad, they've got the same coach playing the same tactics, and then most of the teams they're up against have almost identical teams as well. So it doesn't really feel like we're in a new season necessarily. Whereas I feel like now we've got the international break. It's an opportunity for the new players to come in and that competition to happen. And maybe when we come back, the good thing about having played Atalanta and Inter already is that the fixtures are looking a bit nicer from now on, even though we do now have to start thinking about the Champions League.
Yeah. Well, 20 of October, Lazio Borussia Dortmund. I hope they open the stadium, because it would be a shame to miss this match, honestly.
Yeah, it's an amazing start. What do you think about that? I mean, it's Dortmund at home. I think it's great. It's a really exciting opening match, I suppose, which is what you want. It would have been a bit more disappointing to be, away to Bruges on the first day or something.
Yeah. We have to talk about one of the problems we saw yesterday, right? The defense situation. Radu out, we don't know how long. Luis Felipe was already injured. Bastos, who seems to be on close to leave the team, played and was subbed after, 20 minutes, something like that. And Parolo playing central defender. I thought Parolo played great, but I don't think this can be the answer to the problem.
Well, we had a question about this actually, or more of a comment from Gianni DiFranco. He said, I've talked about it before with Lucas Leiva, but it's Parolo who's enabling Lazio to have two experienced, no-panic players at the back, allowing Acerbi to thrive on the left. Parolo is smart enough to grow into this role, as Leiva would have been, and it's a project worth investigating. So he's pretty happy about it. There's someone else, where is it? Yeah, Andy Lando here. Is Acerbi more valuable to Lazio on the left side of defence rather than in the centre? He set up the goal and he's always eager to counter-attack. He certainly is. I think Acerbi absolutely loves playing in that position. He takes every opportunity he can get to get further up the pitch. But it's an interesting...
He assist yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a good cross. It was a much better cross than Marisic or Faris managed to put in the entire game. But yeah, I mean... It is an interesting one, if Inzaghi does manage to pull a rabbit out of the hat here and turn Marco Parolo, a central midfielder who's 35 years old, suddenly into a capable centre-back, that would be quite something. I mean, do you feel like it's we were already talking a couple of weeks ago about how it's maybe a shame that he's giving Parolo this opportunity and not giving the chance to Armini or a younger player. But do you think, on the other hand, it might actually, like Gianni said, having a cool, calm, experienced player there, that might actually be the answer, or certainly something worth looking at?
What was it in the 90s? I think there were a lot of midfielder that when they were getting older, they were moving back and start playing sweeper. So in Serie A there were a lot of players doing that. I think Parolo has the experience, the knowledge to play in that position. Obviously, you need two strong defenders close to him because he's not very good in marking. But honestly, I mean, a tougher test than the one of yesterday. He was against Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez. Then Sanchez came in. I mean, I don't think there are worse attackers than that one to get tests. So it was an interesting test. So yeah, I think Inzaghi could try it again. On the other side, Inzaghi yesterday said that Armini is not ready for this type of matches, and I think it makes sense, saying that obviously a youngster like Armini is not ready to play against Inter. But I hope we're gonna see him if Lazio has the same problem and we're playing against small teams, to give this youngster a chance, because let's not forget that Armini has been calling the Italy under 20. Has been calling the Italy under 19, 18, 17. So he's rated very good. But so I hope Lazio give him a chance.
And I should have mentioned the miracle of 2020 has occurred, and Roberto Mancini has called up Manuel Lazzari to the Italy squad. Wow.
Well, he called Florenzi, so you can call anybody at that point. But yeah,
I know, he just seemed absolutely determined to ignore the guy. So well, congratulations to him. I should say
well deserved.
We've had a few questions about the defence and reinforcement signing, stuff like that. I should say at this point that basically we're not going to talk about that too much today, because we're recording this on Monday afternoon. It's deadline day. There's not much point in us giving our thoughts about it and then Lazio ending up signing someone before midnight. So instead, we're going to do a Mercato special later in the week and talk all about the transfer market and the signings and so on then, just to make sure we don't look like idiots. Well, we probably will anyway, but for different reasons.
You do, definitely.
Yeah, well, thank you. But speaking of new signings, one of the questions people are wanting to know about as well is Vedat Muriqi, because with Ciro suspended for the next game against Samp, that frees up a spot, obviously. Correa played 90 minutes against Inter, but has had fitness issues. Otherwise, Caicedo's still there, so there are two spots. Do you think Muriqi is going to go straight in? Toronto football fans asked if he's okay fitness-wise, and we had Krolat CLA also asking if who we think will replace Ciro, whether it'll be Muriqi or Caicedo. And he also wants to know who we think will get the captain's armband for that game, which is a good point.
That's interesting. Well, I think if he's fit, Muriqi will definitely play. We saw him training, so they were concerned that he was injured, but he has been called for the national team. So, I mean, if he's called for the national team, then he should be able to play. Now, this is a problem for Lazio, because we would think that he had these 2 weeks to train with Lazio, get into the schemes, the tactics of Simone Inzaghi. Instead, he will be away. So, I don't know how much time he will have. But yeah, I think Inzaghi should try him. Now, I'm not convinced, knowing Simone Inzaghi. I think Caicedo will play near Correa, but I think Muriqi could become a very valuable player. At the moment, I think he's the best signing Lazio did this summer, so we're going to see what happens. Talking about the armband, well, it depends if Parolo plays. At that point, I think Parolo would be the captain. If Parolo doesn't play, then Milinkovic Savic, like he did in the second half.
Or Stefan Radu as well, I suppose, depending on
if he's back.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the pecking order, isn't it? So it goes Lulic first, Ciro second, and then Parolo and Radu, and then that's when it becomes interesting is that usually we have at least one of those 4 players. But yeah, it was fun seeing Sergej with the armband on. I quite like that, actually, to be honest. I wouldn't be against doing that again. But anyway, what else have we got? Yeah, some more about transfer market. We'll deal with that later. I mean, generally, yeah, there's Tifosi Down Under and Philip at Sano asked us similar questions to finish off. Basically saying, do you think Lazio have done enough to provide Inzaghi with a squad to push for the top 4 this season? And then that was from Tifosi Down Under. And then Philip Pizzano said, where do you think the squad is at? Do you think we're capable of competing in the Champions League while having a good year in the league? So I guess these are kind of questions we already addressed when we did the season preview, but now we're 3 games in. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I was surprised by Simone Inzaghi because after the match yesterday, obviously he was addressed about if he feel that the team is good enough, and he was quite confident. I never saw Inzaghi like that confident. He said after the break with this signing, we will have a very good team. I'm sure that we will play great football and we will be a big challenge. So I was surprised because we never saw Simone Inzaghi like that, like this confident. I don't know, maybe he's aware of some signing that we don't, or maybe he saw that players like Akpa Pro are even better than we think, or maybe Jaman Anderson or someone else is going to be a big surprise this season. But he was quite confident. Obviously, Andreas Pereira could be a very, very interesting signing for Lazio. But it was good to see Inzaghi so confident because he see the players every single day. We don't. So he see what teams he have. I believe other teams have had a much better transfer market than us. And I have a big question mark. How is possible that Fiorentina spent all that money, Milan spent all that money, etc. But it's not on the paper you win the Scudetto. It's on the pitch. So it's not the first time that Lazio has a bad transfer market for the media, and then on the pitch things change. So seeing Inzaghi so confident changed a little bit my point of view.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think that it's nice to see some positivity from him, though, isn't it? Because he has spent most of the summer complaining about things and being fairly downcast about how we're late and we haven't quite got what we need. And yeah, so that is a good point. The only thing I'd add to that, really, in terms of the Champions League, is that now that we know the schedule. For Serie A and the Champions League finally, that does actually give me a bit of confidence. One thing about having already played Atalanta and Inter is it's reduced the amount of big games we've got. And actually, if you look at our Champions League group stage, the entire group stage from October until December, we only play one big team in Serie A, which is Juve, at the start of November. From start until finish in the Champions League, our games, I can read them out. We've got Samp, Bologna, Torino, Juve, Crotone, Udinese, Spezia, and then Verona. That makes things a bit easier, I think, for Lazio. Then all of a sudden, later on around the turn of the year, it gets difficult again with Napoli, Milan, and the derby and so on. But I think that's important because that's the most concentrated run of games we're going to have when that squad depth is actually tested. That's the thing that everyone's worried about. Yeah. It becomes a bit easier to handle that squad depth issue, that rotation issue, if those games are against a Crotone or a Spezia rather than a Rome derby.
Yeah, definitely. Again, we have to see the team Inzaghi will pick, because let's not forget Inzaghi has a list of 25 players over 22. So there have been a lot of rumors, but we don't know, well, until tomorrow at lunchtime, we don't know who Inzaghi is going to pick. That's going to be a massive difference. That's going to change a lot of things. Plus the under 22, there are players that could be really useful for the team. So that's going to tell us better what this team can do next year, Alice, I think. So we'll have to wait tomorrow, and we're going to do a special edition of our podcast to talk about the transfer market and recap the list so that we know that, if Di Gennaro stays, we know that he's not going to be on the list. So even if we are not able to sell... Yeah. We have to know where Vavro's gone, by the way. I mean, here in Italy, there's a TV show called Chi l'ha visto, because he has disappeared.
He was in the stand, wasn't he? I think the camera went and panned onto him during the Inter game.
I didn't see him.
I was sure I saw him. Maybe it was just another large, bald man. I don't know.
Well, Alistair, if you don't have a stats, we can wrap it up here.
No, I think I used it too soon with my points from unbeaten positions. That's the one for today.
You have to learn from Patric.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you again, Alistair, and thanks everybody for listening. Remember, you can subscribe on a podcast on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify. Remember, if you became Patreon on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge, after every single match of Lazio, there's a short live reaction video from us. So, $10 a month, you get all this and you support our podcast. So think about it. Alistair, goodbye. We're going to talk again very soon, unfortunately, to recap our transfer market.
Well, what of it there is. I mean, I'll be amazed if there's much happening between now and the end of the day, but we'll soon find out.
Absolutely. Thank you again, guys, and have a nice day. Ciao.